Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and we are back once again with another bonus show looking at what happened in the Scottish Premiership midweek. It was supposed to be Tony Anderson on the show. We were going to have a nice wee Hearts and Hibs dynamic with the Edinburgh derby having taken place on Tuesday. Unfortunately, Tony had to call off sick due to a personal matter, so I have stepped up in his place. But unfortunately, that means you're going to have two Jambos talking about Hearts being 5 points clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership table. So, I'm the one Jambo, and I'm joined by another. It's Robert Borthwick.
Hello, Craig. That sounds good to me. That sounds like the perfect podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just remembered, Rob, just before we get to anything else, I've just realised we could do with doing a NordVPN advert here. You up for that right away? Right off the top?
I would love to, yes.
So, as I've said many times before in the podcast, listeners, you might be sick of us talking about NordVPN. We've been talking about them all season. But that's because more and more of you keep signing up. Because those who are signing up know that it's a very good idea to do. They've been hearing us tell you all about the benefits of it, and they continue to use our code that we've got, which I'll tell you about at the end. But, Rob, you've been on a podcast before. We've talked about NordVPN. Anything else to add to it?
Just that it's a terrific service. I've used it myself. I do think it's tremendous. And for all your VPN needs, I don't think you need to look anywhere else than Nord. Look Nord, don't look Sud or Ud or Est. Look Nord, because that's the best VPN you're going to get.
And I was just thinking there is, so you have had your Twitter account hacked and stolen.
God, yes, I have. Yeah, I saw Tam McManus got his today,
yeah,
so he could do
that's what I was
something.
going to say. Tam McManus could probably have done with having NordVPN, and then he wouldn't be tweeting about all the money he's made from crypto, which obviously hasn't happened.
Poor Tam has had his Twitter account, his X account, farmed out to some BitBro. So avoid that happening to yourself. Get NordVPN now. Whenever Fowler says that code, go and just do it now, and then come back to the podcast. We're fine with that.
Yeah, because NordVPN is obviously known for being, I was going to say it's known for being a VPN, but yeah, obviously. But usually with a VPN, you immediately think of, right, well, that's to do to, bounce it over to another country to use their network, and therefore you can watch things on streaming sites, you can watch football games that you wouldn't have been otherwise be able to in the UK. But one thing they do is they take their online security very seriously. I've said this before, they've even got a monitor for looking at the dark web, so it gives you alerts. So if any of your passwords have been compromised in the past through data leaks, then it'll tell you exactly which passwords have been compromised and where they've been. So then you can change your own passwords accordingly. So had Tam had NordVPN, then he would have been able to do that. I mean, you should also have two-factor authentication on, but me and you have both been burned by that. So, until you get burned yourself, you kind of think, it's not going to happen to me, but it did, but it can. But also, it probably wouldn't have happened as well if he had NordVPN, and he would have been aware that his password was compromised, and then nobody could take it over and start, waxing lyrical about crypto.
I think the name of this podcast is now going to be Tam McManus is compromised. There you go.
Absolutely. So, if you're interested in signing up for NordVPN, you can do so with a free 30-day money-back guarantee by going to nordvpn.com/terracepod. Once more, that's nordvpn.com/terracepod for a free 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, Rob, I think if Tony was on the show, I would have said, right, regardless, even though it was a bit of a duff game, start with the Edinburgh derby. It's good to have a Hearts and Hibs fan on talking about things. However, that's not the case now. It's two of us. So I think we should start with the best game from the midweek. Certainly a bit of an outlier compared to how the other matches went. There was 3 goals in the Celtic game, but either that or it was either 1 each or 1-0. So let's go with the game that finished 4-3, and that was Kilmarnock 4, St Mirren 3 at Rugby Park. Hat-trick hero. I always want to call him Danny. I always seem to remember his first name isn't Danny. That's his uncle's name. Tyreece John-Jules. Also on the score sheet for Killie, opening the scoring, in fact, equaliser for Killie was Greg Kiltie, as he cancelled out Killian Phillips' opener. Phillips brought things back level shortly into the second half, and Scott Tanser got a late goal with St Mirren looking at the end that they might be able to possibly try and snatch the most unlikely of points after John-Jules had helped himself to a hat-trick. And I think we should start with the big man up front. because he came in early in the season after the summer window had shut. And I remember watching him against Falkirk and thinking he looked like he had something about him. But then I remembered reading not long after a Killie fan beside himself raging at how hopeless they were. I think during leading up to the Christmas period, where he basically singled him out as being the worst footballer ever. But that's clearly not the case, because the man is now having kind of been used off the bench occasionally for the start, but sometimes used on the wing as well. They've now got him acting as the target man of that team in a two-man forward line with him and Bruce Anderson working very well together. And as I said, he helped himself to a hat-trick in this game, and he is a huge player in Killie's revival. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it is a revival. They did get beat 5-1 off of Rangers in between their two victories, but when you hadn't won for once, winning 2 out of 3 is a revival.
No, it absolutely is. And I think that, like you said, he was kind of shunted out onto the wing by not just Kettlewell, Doolan as well. And so often I think you do find talented players come to these shores and maybe don't find the right manager, or they're maybe, their versatility goes against them. But John-Jules, he definitely looks like he's got what it takes to be a striker in this league. He kind of feels like a Killie striker, to be honest with you. He's got that sort of personality that we've seen so often from strikers in blue and white in the past. And I think that for a Killie team that was kind of bumbling away to, I don't think they were ever going to get threatened by Livingston, if I'm being honest, but bumbling away to a really dangerous end to the season, potentially in that sort of stop before the trap door in 11th place. Guys like him who have personality, have a bit of something about them, a bit of leadership, can really drag teams out of that sort of mire, and they can drag them out of the dangers that they might be in. And you certainly saw that from John-Jules, but he's not just a personality. He's obviously a good footballer. He's a good finisher, and even one of his goals gets a bit lucky. The bounce comes back off the goalkeeper, and he's able to sort of put it in thereafter, but it shows his doggedness as well, determination. And again, you need battlers, you need guys who have that bit of swagger about them when you are in a bit of danger. And like you say, him and Bruce Anderson together are kind of bringing out the best of each other as well.
Talking about the league positions, that's now 9 clear of Livingston at the bottom of the table, and we'll get to Livingston later on, but it's hard to imagine Livy hauling back that gap. But what it does make very interesting is that you were previously looking at Killie and Livingston and being like, right, okay, we can maybe even cement 12th and 11th place in this league. But the recent upturn with the 2 victories, one against Aberdeen last week, means that you're now looking at a table and you're thinking, it's now only 8 points between Killie and Aberdeen. Are Aberdeen going to have that bad an end to the season, and Killie going to improve that much, and the other teams as well, Dundee, St Mirren, to the point that Aberdeen were roped in a Terry Butcher in charge of Hibs style 2013-14 season? Probably not. However, you can look to Dundee United, you can look to St Mirren, Dundee and Killie, and it could be a case that we've got a very tasty battle here for the team to avoid finishing 11th and contest a playoff final, probably against Partick Thistle.
Yeah, do you know what? All of them have kind of had moments in the season as well. Killie are kind of having their moment just now. Dundee went through that spell where they took points off of the Old Firm. Aberdeen in around about September, October time looked okay. Generally just bumbled, I have to say, through the season. St Mirren have won a cup, and then basically the arse has fallen out of them ever since, apart from beating Hearts. Thanks very much. But otherwise, it is really hard to call it. And I think that sometimes managerial appointments or signings can come at just the right time for certain teams for the business end. And I suppose Neil McCann, who, he was out of football for a long time, but didn't necessarily do a terrible job at Dundee in the past, for example. He's clearly got something about him, especially when it comes to teams down towards the bottom. I feel like he is a very bullish character. And is going to grab guys by not just the scruff of the shirt, occasionally by the throat, I think, if they're not doing their job properly, and he can be a real galvanizer. So, Livy, in my opinion, are gone, but the rest of the teams there, it is going to be very interesting to see how that sort of jumble ends up before the split and then thereafter.
Going back to this game in particular, there was an interesting little tactical curveball thrown by Neil McCann. And it's definitely a curveball, like every sense of that meaning, because even before the game, when they'd done their pre-match warm-ups and you kind of sometimes set them out in the shape, it very much looked like Brad Lyons was going to be playing on the right of the back four, which he's done before in the past. And instead, It's the winger they got, the young winger they got for Rangers. They stuck him in there at right back. You're thinking, against St Mirren in particular, you're thinking, oh, that might be a recipe for disaster. Take note, Derek McInnes. And instead, it's Finlay Curtis has a huge impact on this game. Gets obviously the assist for the opening goal, but just playing with a lot of confidence, getting down the wing and making an impact in the final third. It's probably not something you're going to see as much going forward. McCann has settled into this kind of diamond formation. However, Jamie Brandon is back. So it'll be interesting to see whether McCann now, with Brandon back in contention, he returned from injury, if he's now fit enough to start games, whether he will now change it up and whether he will go to a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3, because Curtis has certainly shown in his early appearances that he can, well, he came on late against Aberdeen. He's shown in this appearance that he is capable of doing some good things for Killie between now and the end of the season.
I just loved his fearlessness of being chucked in at right back. And, I think the first 15, 20 minutes maybe took him a little bit of time to get up to the speed of the game and maybe fully, properly understand his role. But from there on in, he was like, fuck this, like I can attack. I can just go forward. I can put balls in the box. I can get shots away at goal. He's got a tremendous strike on him. A couple of shots from the edge of the box that sort of whistled nearby the post and pulled a save out of the goalkeeper as well. But his sort of inclusion in first team football at Rangers will have helped him as well. Come into that. He's not just a young boy who's been chucked in. He does have a bit of experience, played in Europe, all this kind of stuff. So, he's obviously got the talent, and Neil McCann obviously will know him from his time in interim charge at Rangers last season. It's definitely exciting from a Killie point of view. They've had nothing really to shout about for a long, long time this season. Haven't been used to the likes of Dan Armstrong and all that kind of stuff, who could produce moments in a game, maybe not drag them up the league table, but certainly produce moments. And with John-Jules and Finlay Curtis both looking like really good attacking outlets, then that can only be a good thing.
So something else I thought was interesting for this game, from a Kilmarnock perspective, and something to keep your eye on, because Neil McCann in the past, he's not been a bad manager by any stretch of the imagination. Didn't end well for him at Dundee, but he kept him up when he initially went in, and they kept him up the following season and playing a decent brand of football and bringing some real talents to the club in the form of Glenn Kamara and Jack Hendry. But he's certainly known to be, as you said earlier, get players by the throat, a spiky character, and somebody who has been known to be possibly fall out with maybe some of his players. Certainly word on the street, it's certainly been the case that Scott Bain, going back to the Dundee days. And in this, it shows that he's certainly not afraid. He's not a manager who's going to be hesitant about making calls that he sees fit for how the game's going, regardless of how big an influence or how big a personality or whatever the player is he's taken off. And I think you saw this with Brad Lyons coming off in this one. So Lyons was partially at fault for the second St Mirren goal. He stops following the run of Killian Phillips as he goes into the penalty area. And then not long after that, well, to be fair, it was still about 18 minutes after that, but he's taken off. McCann brings on Aaron Tishbola. Killie were improved from that point forward, had a bit more calmness about their play, somebody who's a bit more of a technical player. But Brad Lyons, obviously, captain of the club. He's been a real kind of workhorse for Killie, obviously a popular player. And he had words with Dodds and McCann as he went off. So just something to monitor, something to keep an eye on.
I would suggest to Brad Lyons, pick your battles, to be honest. You must know them well enough by now that that's not... I think Billy Dodds can be that sort of character as well. I think he's got it in him to snap. So yeah, pick your battle, Brad. No player likes getting subbed off, and I don't mind seeing a player upset when they are subbed off, because they're like the fans in the stand. They want to win, and maybe they're coming off because things aren't going for them, or they've made a mistake or whatever. Don't do it to the manager on the touchline. I just feel that's never going to help anything. It becomes a bit of a circus, and that's going to help absolutely nobody. But obviously in this game, it didn't affect Kilmarnock. If anything, Neil McCann was completely vindicated with the change that he made, getting a little bit more control with Tishbola coming on. So yeah, Brad Lyons, if we see him with sunglasses instead of just normal glasses, then we'll know that something's gone terribly wrong in the dressing room. Maybe a black eye in there, a chucked boot, a teacup.
A chucked boot. So before we move on, St Mirren, it's a bit annoying for us personally that the outlier that proved the rule, which was that game last midweek where St Mirren, I mean, yeah, maybe struggled to break down 10 men, but they showed plenty of fight in that match, showed plenty of heart, something that's maybe been a bit missing from their players. They've kind of looked through a team like, not necessarily like they've turned against a manager or anything too drastic, but a team that just kind of looked like it was going through the motions a little bit and not really having a lot of kind of belief in themselves and each other. And then you think, right, they've turned a corner. They then go into the Scottish Cup. Yeah, they struggle a little bit against Sergio Oriens, but they eventually do win through. And you think, right, yeah, it wasn't pretty. It needed extra time, but a victory's a victory, and that's now 2 in a row, and let's get on and let's build from this. And then they go to Killie. It's a place that's maybe just cursed for them, to be fair. They never win at Rugby Park. But to concede 4 goals and to look as poor defensively as they did again makes you wonder whether that turning point that we kind of thought might be coming after those last 2 games isn't there yet, and they're still right in for a long slog between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, weirdly passive for a St Mirren team as well. Like, a lot of it is very uncharacteristic. I'd love to know what they were drinking after they won the cup, because this hangover is an absolute doozy. That's like one of yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it is bizarre, and I think that
they need to take their milk thistles. They need to take their milk thistles and folic acids and magnesium. I'll tell you, that helps.
Send it straight to Paisley, Craig. Don't tell me. It is bizarre because, in a way, I think that the victory against Hearts could be a bit of a false dawn, because anyone who watched that game knows, yes, although they had a lot of the ball and they were getting the ball into the box, none of it was done with a great deal of confidence. The strikers still didn't look confident. Mandron had a couple of, or Mandarin, as Chris Boyd was calling him, which I really enjoyed. Had a couple of chances to take a good touch and get a shot away or hit it first time, never did. There was opportunities for wing backs to get the ball in the box earlier. They never did. And it was a bit like, right, where is this St Mirren that has an identity that we have as a podcast, to be honest, we really enjoyed for the last few years? Where's that gone? And I think that, they scored 3 goals, obviously, in midweek, and Killie and Phillips scoring 2 of them is no surprise, because I don't think his effort levels or quality levels necessarily have really dropped all that much during this downturn. But yeah, they did. They looked defensively all at sea, zero confidence in the team that they think. Basically, they don't look like they think they're going to break a team down. It's all kind of hopeful, and yeah, there will be a remedy to it. Stephen Robinson is by far and away a good enough manager to turn it around. But right now, it's a stinking bit of form they're in. Obviously, you can even looking at the Hearts result, it still wasn't a great performance. So yeah, it is. I don't think it's panic stations, but certainly there's maybe small alarm bells sort of going off in the background for St Mirren, because if this continues, especially going into the split, then they could be in a bit of bother.
I think that something that stood out for me was the ease of the first Killie goal scored by Kiltie, where just I looked at it a few times trying to figure out who was kind of mostly at fault, and I came to the conclusion that it was maybe just symptomatic of, like you say, kind of that passivity, and also maybe just not being as locked in and not being as kind of disciplined as you could have think of this St Mirren team in defence. Like you see at the goal, Freckleton leaves his man to go kind of defend the cross into the front post, kind of defend that corner of the 6-yard box, and he's pointing to Richard King, it must be, to come in and shift along, and that happens. And while this is going on, Marcus Fraser's kind of looking over his right shoulder a lot, and he makes a motion as well. And I tried to look at him after the goal to see if he kind of went mental in anybody, but he didn't seem to. Like, he just seemed to kind of go like, hands in the air, kind of what's happened here kind of thing. But I wondered whether he was asking Jayden Richardson to tuck in at that right wing back spot. But you see where Kiltie scores, like that's quite. Yeah, Richardson should maybe see the danger and react a bit more and get in there. But it is kind of just thinking that's not the usual position you would expect a right wing back to be going. Yeah, a right back, certainly, but maybe not a right wing back to be going kind of that central to stop somebody scoring a goal. So I was just thinking, they seem to be all at sea at the back, and that's not really like them.
No, and I think that, like, yeah, you look at the reactions of the players in the aftermath, and all of them have their arms outstretched looking at each other, and that tells you that is a deeply disorganised defence, because usually if it's organised and the goal goes in, then they're all going to point at the guy who's at fault.
Yeah.
But on this occasion, they were all just looking around. And, in the week that we witnessed the Super Bowl, I know that the American sports fans will love this, but it's like busted coverage in an NFL play. When someone just gets free and there's no real reason around it, it's just a series of mistakes have allowed that player to be completely in open field to make a play. And that's what Greg Kiltie had. It was a great ball in, don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful ball in. And sometimes balls are very, very hard to defend. I don't think this one would have been if the St Mirren players were doing their tasks properly. And yeah, like we've said a couple of times now, it's out of character for a Stephen Robinson team who is usually so well drilled to see something that easy sort of end up in the back of the net.
Right, let's move on to our second game, and that is Tuesday's Edinburgh derby in front of the Sky Sports cameras. I believe I'm right, so it was Sky Sports or Premier Sport?
Premier.
Well, Premier, sorry. In front of the Premier Sports cameras as Hearts won 1-0 thanks to a 88th minute goal from Thomas Magnusson. Rob, when I was writing up my notes for this, I actually struggled quite a bit because this game was a big pile of ass, as it always is in an Edinburgh derby. So I'm just going to pass the buck, essentially. I'm going to go right to you. What do you want to talk about first?
Oh, Christ, really? Really?
So I think... So as I was watching this game, same as this has happened so many times since like the start of the season and beating Celtic, and like most of the games Hearts are played up until that point, Hearts have been really good. And I thought, and they beat Celtic, go 9 clear, and you're thinking there's going to be a bit of regression. However, I think this team can actually win the league. And there's been so many matches since then where I'm in the middle of watching the match and I'm like, what are fucking people talking about? This team's no good enough to win a league. And yet, they keep pulling it out. Keep managing to do it. I know recently lost the game, but overall, like the general trend, keep managing to do it, keep pulling it out, keep having a old firm at arm's length. And 2, I don't watch Celtic and Rangers games. Like, oh no, wait, maybe they can because they're rubbish as well. All of them are just kind of seeming to do the same thing where they're not playing particularly well, but managing to get the 3 points. Rangers obviously not done it in their last game, but it's just kind of it's part of an overall trend between them. That's what I'm seeing from this Hearts team. But I would still like to feel, if I was going to feel in any way real confidence, when I'm not, I'm feeling like I'm just getting drawn into the latter part of the season so that my heart can be ripped out and shown to me. And if it happens with like 2 or 3 games left to go, that's just going to be devastating. But I would feel a bit more confident about things if they started to actually play a bit better in attack. Defensively, not really too many issues. Sure, Finlay has a brain fart now and again, but as you've seen from this match, he can bounce back very well and put in a good performance. But I wonder, Rob, is it time to perhaps try something that's not been used a lot this season, which is a 4-3-3? If you think now, Magnusson coming off the bench, getting a goal, he can play ahead of Beningame and Leonard. He can be the number 10. He can be a focal point in terms of long balls up to him because he's very good in the air. He does seem to have that ability as well to break into the penalty area and score goals. I think that's now 3 for the campaign. He's also had another one disallowed as well from VAR. And if you don't want to play him, you've also got Ajew now fit. And now you've got an abundance of wingers to play, which also means as well you could also have Kizidis getting a bit of a rest without things going completely to pot. What do you reckon?
I think that when Hearts play 4 at the back, the formation is so fluid anyway that you can kind of argue that we play 4-3-3 all the time. It's like in this one, for example, we did what we do against Celtic, which is Claudio Braga dropped back, maybe 5 or 10 yards and sat on Barlasser because we knew that he was going to be the man who can get his foot on the ball and play a pass. So he was kind of dropped back into a more midfield role with Kabore being the sort of the one man up front. I know what you mean. Braga's not a centre midfielder.
Yeah, can I maybe rephrase it then? Can you play the 4-4-2 but have Braga as the furthest advanced player and have either Ajew or Magnusson as number 10?
Yeah, I wouldn't be against it at all. I really wouldn't. I think that Kabore has got a lot of physical attributes that really suit Scottish football. He is a very large man. He's not going to give defenders any peace whatsoever. But in terms of it working for him in front of goal, obviously he had a tremendous performance and 2 goals at Tannadice. But in the 2 games since, he's not really hit those heights again.
Yeah. In particular in the first half in this one, whenever there was a promising move and it went to him, it just kind of, that was when it not fully broke down in that he would be the one to give it away, but he would just take a bad touch or he'd hold on to it too long, and the momentum or the angle was then gone, and it kind of stalled things.
He brings a great amount of chaos to games that need it, and you know, you would argue that the Edinburgh Derby is one, but I think that in this one, what both teams really lacked was the ability to hold it up from. Dane Scarlett wasn't able to do it for Hibs. Kabore wasn't able to do it for Hearts. And whenever Hearts did do it, it was usually Claudio Braga who had taken a more advanced role, who was able to take it in and, you know, try and play in Casemiro and guys like that. Playing Braga as the number 9, the most advanced forward, I'm not against at all. I think with Aju now reaching sort of full fitness, then that's certainly going to be more of an option. Thomas Magnusson, whenever he's played in that more advanced role, has done well this season, but it's usually been off the bench. It's usually when we're looking to conserve a lead. You know, he can be, basically it's like a running 10 is how it's described. He described it himself as that. He was like, yeah, go on in the number 10 position, but mainly I'm there for pressing, I'm there for advanced sort of defensive actions and all that kind of stuff. But from the start, you wouldn't be against it, because I don't think that Magnusson is as technical as Benny and Mark Leonard, but certainly he can ruffle feathers. He gets it in such great goal-scoring positions. It's just a natural knack that he has that I've noticed with Aju as well. Even in the limited time that we've seen him, he always gets into the right positions. So both of them certainly can play in that more advanced role in midfield and allow Braga to be what he's maybe best at, which is someone who's going to bother defenders but has the skill and the quality to get past them or run the channel or get in between the sticks and put in the back of the net.
Well, I think I'd really say about Hearts, Frankie Kent, another one. I talked about Finlay, but Kent was at fault for that goal against St Mirren. He is required to start because Craig Halkett's not there, and I don't think there's really anybody else in McInnes trusts in the heart of defence who can consistently win balls there. He had a big performance in this one. Him and Harry Milne, I think were maybe the best two players in Maroon.
Milne was super. I could do an entire hour on Harry Milne, to be honest with you, but I'll save the listeners that for now. For now, it'll be one of the special episodes when we win the league. I'll do a one-man hour-long monologue for every single member of the Hearts team.
That'll be one episode of a 31-part special. Every player in the first team squad.
Doing my absolute best to get an hour out of Saba Karjota. But yeah, no, I think Milne's just fantastic. I think he's up there in the current conversation for Player of the Year in the league. But no, Frankie Kent, I thought he was excellent. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And I think that coming into a game like that, when you've not been starting many games, having the armband on as well, giving them that extra sense of leadership, and, you know, something that we need right now. Let's never forget that we are without Shankland, Halkett and Devlin for this game. That's your captain, vice-captain and vice-vice-captain. That is the three leaders through the spine of the team, all missing for this game. And we know that Benny offers leadership in different ways. He does it by calming the game down and having the ball. Braga does it by leading by example, leading the press, all this kind of stuff. A proper vocal leader, Frankie Kent absolutely is. He is the loudest in training. He's the loudest out on the pitch. I was sitting in the press box for this one. Even in the madness of an Edinburgh Derby, you could hear him barking instructions. And that's so important. I thought he was excellent. I think that a lot of Hibs fans were expecting Dane Scarlett to come in and really ruffle feathers and you know, attempt to bully the Hearts centre-halves. All that I remember him getting any joy from Frankie Kent in was elbowing him in the face and getting a yellow card. Otherwise, Kent was absolutely dominant against him, and obviously Scarlett had to come off. Shuto came on, who again, you know, has the sort of, from the very limited game time he's had, has this flat track bully sort of reputation. He was rubbish. All he did was run into people, give away fouls, and give away the foul that led to the goal. So
yeah, that was somebody playing the occasion far too much.
Oh my goodness. He literally came on and was trying really hard to look hard. Do you know what I mean? Like, the first thing he did was he fouled Harry Milne and then stood over him. And I was like, I don't think you mean this. I think you're actually a bit worried about this occasion and you're trying to play up to it. And that's exactly what it was. He was atrocious when he came on. Absolute pish. But it's another, you know, sort of another positive for both Finlay and Kent is that they refused to rise to it. They refused to get bullied by any Hibs player who was trying to do so. And yeah, a fantastic defensive performance. I thought McEntee at right back, obviously he started the season right back. I thought he did absolutely fine as well. Chesnikoff in front of him didn't really show much from, you know, in the sense that we signed him as a winger to score goals and provide assists. But from a defensive point of view, I don't think anyone won more tackles in the game than Islam Chesnikov. Like, he really battled and dug in well. So defensively, you can have no faults with the Hearts' performance. I think in an attacking sense, that's where it was a bit shy. But even then, we found a way to win the game.
Yeah, if you look at the Hibs side as well, the positives were Bushiri at the back looked like. If you look back to, and I remember thinking this during the game, if you look back to how rattled he was in Edinburgh derbies before, especially at Tynecastle, and then you looked at that player on Tuesday night, he actually brought a real sense of calm to that Hibs defence, and he needed to do it as well, because to the right of him was one of the new signings.
Garanga.
I was going to try and go for the full name, Munashi Garanga, and he was one of those,
you got it right, by the way, but that's fine. It's fine.
Definitely not.
We know who they mean. It's fine.
Definitely didn't get it right. I'll never get it right. I'll get it right and then he'll leave not long after. But he was a player, especially, that you kind of thought when he got that injury and he went off for Warren O'Hora, I was actually thinking, Hibs have actually got better here because O'Hora's more of a dependable player. It's not like he made a big error, but you kind of thought this game's going to be won by an error, and if it is, he's the most likely candidate in a Hibs jersey. But Rocky, you can see Rocky kind of talking to him a lot and trying to get him to calm down and trying to get him to focus on the task and again not play the occasion. Chaiwa was again kind of just more kind of battling. He was good in the middle of the park as well. Just not a lot in it. Hibs had a bit of territory the second half, but only really created one great chance, and it was another chance in Edinburgh derby wasted by Martin Boyle this season. That's 2 games at Tynecastle where he could have scored a goal, and you could easily be talking about Hibs having won all 3 derbies with Martin Boyle scoring in 1-0 wins in the 2 games at Tynecastle. Like it's more of a difficult chance than the last one, but I think he should at the very least be hitting the target there, having got to the ball first. It's more he just kind of needs to kind of stab at it, but he just gets his foot too far under it and puts it over the bar. And if you look at Boyle last season when he was scoring like the most efficient finishing performance of his career, scoring loads of goals, maybe the best season he's ever had, and then the amount of chances he's missed this season. And when I'm getting on in age, you can't help but like kind of jump to the most pessimistic scenario.
Not 100%, but I think that one thing Martin Boyle has done is proved us wrong in the past. I wouldn't put it past him to prove us wrong again. People said he'd be washed after his knee injury, after he came back from the Middle East, all this kind of stuff, and he never has been. He does go through dips in form, and I think that's just the sort of player he is. I would not be surprised if you and I were doing a podcast in a month's time and we're saying, Christ, Martin Boyle scored 4 goals in his last 4 games. That's like, he's that sort of player.
Just thinking I've locked him in to score the winner in the post-split derby at Easter Road now.
Of course you have. Yeah, but that's fine. That's ages away. We'll win the league by then. So I think that the Martin Boyle, the Boyle chance was the one time in the game that Nicky Cadden got a good delivery into the box. Yeah. And again, I think that's something that should be seen as a massive positive for Hearts, because Chesnikoff and McEntee did a right number on him. Anytime he looked like he was going to have the possibility to get the ball in, there was 2 players on top of him. On that occasion, it was a great pinged ball out to him, I think, by Barlasser, and he's able to get the better of him and get the ball into the middle. But listen, every single derby has been fine margins, those 2 words, for the last 5-6 years. And this was just another example of it. Hibs ball in from their left wing back, put over by Martin Boyle. Hearts ball in from their left wing back was put in by Thomas Magnuson. That is the difference in this game, because really you couldn't fit a daily record between them otherwise.
Yeah. Right, let's move to our third game. And this took place at Celtic Park on Wednesday night. Celtic defeating Livingston by 2-1. Not a surprising result by any means, but a surprising scoreline in itself. And surprising that it took Celtic until injury time to finally grab the winner. And obviously it had to be Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain with the winner, scoring an excellent shot from just outside the Livingston penalty area, curling it into the far corner and giving Celtic a huge 3 points, because there was a point late in this match where Celtic were 8 behind Hearts and 5 behind Rangers. Yeah, they got a game in hand, but that game against Aberdeen, when it looked like it was coming at the perfect time for them originally, is now going to be sandwiched in a really tough run for Martin O'Neill's side. So the scoring in this one was opened by Marcelo Sirachi. Jerome Pryor, I believe, having made 6 saves before then in the first 50 minutes of the match, thought, do you know what, I'm not going to bother this time, and just let the ball fly past him.
It took a deflection.
Did it take a deflection?
It did. There's an angle from behind the goal. Celtic do an all angles thing. It takes the slightest of nicks, and you can see him he's going to the ball's coming into, sort of throat height, and it takes a nick, and he just puts his arms down because he's like, I'm not going to get that. So
fair enough. Because on the broadcast, there wasn't an angle where you could see any deflection.
It looked so weird because you're like, that's a decent strike. Hold on, that's gone in directly in the centre of the net, and that's where the goalkeeper is literally standing. I was like, what has happened? But no, there was a deflection, and it was just enough to take it over his shoulder.
And Robbie Muirhead equalised the second half for Livingston from the penalty spot, an absolute stonewaller after Rio Hatate had clumsily taken him down after a set piece. And Rob, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I still don't think this necessarily means he's going to be a good signing. But it certainly helps his chances. It gives him a lift. It creates an idea of faith in the manager that he can be trusted to play, he can be trusted to contribute. So it's not going to be a scenario where he comes in and, he plays like 2 or 3 poor games right away because he's not up to speed. And because it's not like, do you know what? I was going to say it's not like he'd really done anything else in his 15 so minutes on the park in this one. But it was the way the game was played. Nobody really in the centre of Celtic really done anything. Negan had a couple of shots from the edge of the box that flew over the bar. Everybody else, it wasn't really about them. It was more Celtic were constantly going to the wing. So that would be unfair to say that. But say he was chucked in another game and he's just not up to speed because he's not played since last May. I don't think he's only been training. Scottish League, for all its faults, is a very harsh environment to come into where you're not up to match fitness. But that should give him a huge confidence boost that he can, once he's adapted to the speed of the game, he should know that he's got that a little bit extra quality to go and win matches for Celtic. And ultimately, that's what he's brought in for. Although it'll be interesting to see, because I thought initially he's been brought in and he's not going to start most games because they've got Negrin who scores every week. They've got Captain McGregor. I may as well call him that. Captain McGregor. I wasn't supposed to. This is like clerics. I wasn't supposed to be in today. Callum McGregor, who's obviously going to play every minute of every game, and Arne Engels, who's so good that they've turned down a £25 million offer for him. So I was thinking Chamberlain's probably just going to play this role and come off the bench for him, but maybe he's going to start a bit more now with Engels going out with a thigh injury. I've not seen any news on whether that's a long-term thing, but if it is, then he's going to be needed a lot more. And the signs so far are positive when you bend one into the far post in the 91st minute.
Yeah, Captain McGregor and Lance Corporal Engels in the middle there. I think, yeah.
Deserter Rio Hatate.
I think, Big Long Chamberlain is going to be a good signing. I think that you look at when Celtic bring in guys like, Aaron Moy a few years ago and stuff like that, it's like he was able to come in and just from his experience of playing at that level down south and playing for good sides, it was like, I can do this without actually really having to try all that hard because I've got the football brain to be able to do it. Oxlade-Chamberlain's going to be that guy. Is that going to be enough? That's the big question. Is that going to be enough to completely arrest the way that Celtic are playing and have been playing for months, which is way below par for the quality of players that they have? The question is Oxlade-Chamberlain going to be enough of a leader? Is he going to be enough of a game changer in terms of, do standards in training go up? Does his intelligence on the ball open up new passageways for Celtic to play in behind the team? All this kind of stuff. It's not just about performance and aura and vibe. It's about so much more. And I think that whilst Martin O'Neill was so keen to put zero pressure on Thomas Chivinchara when he came in, I think the pressure has to be on Oxlade-Chamberlain to try and be that guy, because right now, even with Captain McGregor and the rest of the army, they've been unable to really change the way that they're playing. But if history tells us any team is going to be able to put a run together, it's Celtic. Although it seems, a bit far away and a bit distant just now, purely based on performances, it is still them who can really, screw the nut and put something together to win a title. So if Oxlade-Chamberlain is going to be that difference maker, which he already has, he's turned 1 point into 3, then, they certainly have a great chance going into the running.
Yeah, I'm not going to fully roll it back, but prior to the January window, I said I thought Rangers would win the title, or early into the January window. And that was because I thought that Rangers would look better than they do at this point in time for the signings they made in January. However, I'm not going to fully roll it back because there's still time for Rangers to fit in their new pieces a bit more and for those guys to get up to speed and for Rangers to make a late burst. But I'm concerned about that prediction because Celtic are doing what I basically said earlier on the season about Rangers, and they're just finding ways to win all the time.
So Hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. But if it's not going to be Hearts, and I just don't think, Rob, it's just 35 years of Scottish football abuse. Basically, it just doesn't make me think there's going to be a happy.
Craig, there's a huge body of evidence to suggest that Hearts aren't going to win this.
Yeah,
don't worry. You don't have to explain it.
So that's why I'm just naturally now going, but I'm just flopping between one side of Rangers or Celtic, and that's why I'm now kind of starting to think about my Rangers prediction and think about Celtic, and what they've got on their side that Rangers don't is muscle memory.
Yeah.
Like so many guys who have won titles before, and like the amount of last minute goals they're scoring is ridiculous. And you can say, well, that quote unquote luck will run it eventually, but they do it all the time. They've done it loads last season as well. They've done it loads this season. They just keep going, just pummel teams with their play until finally somebody makes an error, or in this case, somebody just pulls out a bit of skill that the other team could do nothing about.
It's just, obviously, it's the whole point of us being podcasters, predicting and looking forward. But it's like nothing's won on the 12th of February, which is when we're recording now. There's still so much football to play, and I know it's like, only 6 or 7 games before the split. It's like, yeah, it's 6 or 7 games of football. That's 18 to 21 points. Like that's a huge number of games. So it's like, I totally get it, but at the same time, I think that people always say it's like, after 2 rounds of fixtures, you might know how the league's going to end up. And then the sort of marker in the sand after that is the split. What's the points difference going into the split? Because that's when the best play the best in the league. And that's when, like me and Ewan discussed a couple of weeks ago, that's when Hibs, Motherwell and Falkirk could become kingmakers just by getting results and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's I'm not flying my flag in any way. I'm still maintaining it. I hope Hearts win it. And that's my line. That's what I'm saying.
With Celtic, if they are going to go on a run, they could point to the first 15, 20 minutes of this game and say, right, this is what we need to do all the time, because they could have been out of sight in this one. They absolutely pummeled Livingston during that period. Livingston contributed to that a little bit by not necessarily being too attacking. That's not really what I mean. But is that when in the second half, I felt that and even towards the end of the first half, when they did retreat, they got into a shape, like a defensive solid shape, a bit easier. They were just a bit too spread out to begin with in terms of the gaps between the wing backs and the centre backs, and even the gaps between like defensive midfield. It was just, it allowed Celtic too many areas in which to operate. But to be fair to them as well, Celtic did zip the ball around really well. And when Celtic move with that level of tempo and that level of intensity, then they can pass the ball around anybody. And constantly they managed to drop it into the area where Tinekte would be going on one wing and Maeda would be going on the other wing. And they were symptomatic of Celtic in this game. First 20 odd minutes, both of them getting behind constantly, causing loads of problems, playing great, looks like it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. And then for the rest of the game, they both were quite poor. You didn't see Maeda really at all, and Tinekte turned back into the regen of Mikey Johnson.
But I feel like that's kind of what this is with this Celtic team this season, is that like there's no doubt in these are players of a quality that should win the league above Rangers and above Hearts. That is the quality of player that they have. But it's like it's an unreliable car of a Celtic team. It's going to get you, from A to B, but you'll have so many questions about how it's got you there. It's going to make choking noises as it gets there. The indicators don't work. Like the power steering's off, all this kind of stuff. It's like, it is a moving car, but there's so much wrong with it that you don't know if it's reliable enough to get you to the end destination. So it's like, that's kind of what they are just now. They could be great. The mentality of that Celtic team right now is, and we saw it in this game, when one thing goes against them, it just kind of looks like, right, okay, well, what are we doing then? If that's Engels getting injured, or if that's giving away the penalty or whatever, like there's just little triggers in every game right now, which is affecting the way that they're playing. It's not helped by off-field issues and the fans' current contempt. It's not just the Green Brigade. It is the contempt of 55 to 60,000 Celtic fans that are sitting in there. It isn't just the Green Brigade. Yes, they are the tub thumpers of that Celtic support, and they'll start chants and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter because you've got Joe Blogs like in the stand who also is feeling the same way.
Danny Behoy.
Jane O'Doe. But yeah, I think that you've got that contempt throughout the stadium, and it's not just the Green Brigade.
I've got another one. Jane O'Doherty.
Oh yes, right, okay. Now we're cooking by gas, right? Listen, I'm trying to make a really good point here, but let's just make no. I'm with you. Let's just make funny names instead. That sound a bit Irish. I think in the past, the Green Brigade have had their disagreements with the club and they've been banned, and sometimes fans from other sections of the stadium will agree with the club on that. They're not the universal sort of loved aspect of Celtic Football Club. Right now, the way the Green Brigade are feeling is the way that vast majority of Celtic fans are feeling about this board and about what's happening. And I said it on the podcast with you a couple of weeks ago. It's like they're happy to have Martin O'Neill back. They love that this cult figure is back at the club. It's not enough. It is not enough to erase the hatred and the dislike that they have for the sitting board. So add that into it, and it does make it. I think it translates onto the pitch sometimes. I really do.
Just talk briefly about Livy before we move on. It's always difficult to really analyse a team playing at Celtic Park. I think two things stood out. One, how well the centre-backs played. Like Danny Wilson, not been good by any stretch of the imagination this season. Ryan McGowan, not been good since his return from injury. Both of them played well, but I thought especially Brooklyn Kabangolo, who obviously the last time we properly talked about him on the podcast was after that hilarious opening 10 minutes against Killie, in which he could and should have been sent off.
These are the players you want in Scottish football. That's a good thing.
But he was a player. He's a player that Livy, I've said repeatedly recently, the player that Livy needs, that a centre back who can stick his head on the ball, because he's a big guy, a huge guy, and he can head the ball away. Now, I still think it's mental that they didn't go out and sign an experienced player to do it in January, because as I've just said, he's somebody that should have been sent off in the opening 10 minutes of a game for persistent fouling, and he's quite young. So they should have went out and signed another experienced player, especially since, like I say, McGowan's not played well for months consistently. Danny Wilson's not played well since stepping back up. They really needed more help at centre-half, so they should still have went out and signed another centre-half who can stick his head on the ball. But he does look he will help them from now until the end of the season. Whether that's completely futile or not, probably likely to be. But from this game as well, I thought that their substitutes made them weaker, but it was kind of thing where, because you're playing away at Celtic Park and you're having to do so much running, they kind of had to probably be made anyway. Like Emmanuel Danzo was, I thought, one of the kind of few players for Livy, if not maybe the only player who at times was able to get his foot on the ball, kind of think a little bit outside the box and like manage to shimmy a little bit, make a bit of space, make a pass that kept Livy in possession, so that at least had some periods where Celtic just weren't constantly at them. But he went off for 30 minutes to go. Around about the same time as well, not long after that, Stevie May went off for Wanner, Yannick Wanner, or Vanner probably. I think he's German. Yannick Vanner came on. That wasn't so much a drop off, but again, you kind of liked May's industry, his running ability, and the final one was, or a final couple actually, like Macaulay Tait and Robbie Muirhead going off for Bakila and Lewis Smith. Smith was quite poor when he came off. He didn't kind of handle the situation well, but at the same time, he's a winger that likes to get the ball and run at people. He was having to basically never leave 30 yards from within his own goal. But Bakila didn't do anything really in terms of not necessarily holding it up, but even doing something in attack to kind of put Celtic off enough that you can at least slow them down or waste a few seconds. Whereas Muirhead, not consistently, because it's just very hard to do when you're by yourself, but he was at least able to do that at points during the game. So Levy just got weaker with basically every sub, but Bartley's putting out his best team, and it's going to be only a matter of time before the legs run out on a few of those guys. Maybe he could have kept somebody like Danzo, because he'd sacrificed him for the defensive kind of size of Mo Salah. Maybe he could have waited a wee bit more for that, but in the end, they didn't concede too many opportunities to Celtic, and they were beaten by a great strike, so not really a whole lot more they could have done. Right. Let's move on to our fourth game, which was a televised game on Sky Sports on Wednesday. Motherwell 1, Rangers 1. Rangers opened the scoring in the first half through Nico Raskan. And then, of course, right near the end, it was the Celtic Lorry, Stephen Welsh, in the 89th minute, making sure this was a share of the spoils. Rob, I didn't see this one, but you did. So
yes.
Let's begin with Rangers' opening goal, because it was a very well worked move, wasn't it?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think that, I've discussed this with Terrace Podcast's in-house Rangers correspondent about how to use their midfield properly and what's the best combination that goes into that midfield. Diamande was phenomenal in the build-up to this goal. The way that he rolls Elliot Watt in the middle of the park, drives forward 50, 60 yards, and then Nico Raskan's run off the back of Stephen O'Donnell and the slide rule pass from Diamande, the finish from Raskan. It's a fantastic goal. And I think that it's something that, again, we spoke about with Celtic. These are players that are capable of doing this. It's having the confidence to be able to actually go out there and do it. Rangers didn't do it, again, at any stage in this game, and they've barely done it in the preceding 7 or 8 games. They are it's so frustrating. Not for me, obviously it's great, but it's frustrating when you know that you've got these players of quality. I think Raskan, to be fair, played well for the entire duration he was on the pitch. I thought he was excellent for Rangers. But too many other players, we use the word passive, lack of creativity and lack of confidence to just go and do what they're capable of doing. It's almost like a fear of losing the ball is going to cost them, or there's a fear of getting booed by the fans, because that is something that happened so much earlier on this season. That's a scar that's going to live within the players for a good wee while, is knowing that these fans will get on your back as soon as they possibly can if you give them a reason to. So it's almost like they're living with that fear, that wee cloud above their head. But that goal was fantastic. It was a great start for Rangers, and it had me worried for roughly 5 to 10 minutes, and I was like, I think Motherwell are going to be fine.
So they eventually got the goal, and as I said, it was Stephen Welsh. But they were helped out by a knockdown from Ethor Björgolfsson.
Nice.
I am unfamiliar with this man, this substitute which came on for Motherwell, and it shows you that I've not watched Motherwell recently, because he has played in each of the last 3 games. But Rob, you got a good look at him after he came off the bench for the final 22 minutes of this one, plus injury time. What did you make of him?
I mean, I'll speak about him, and then I'll go on to speak about the rest of the subs as well, because I think that was quite a crucial part in this game. But Björgolfsson, he looks like a different option, is what I would call him. I don't think he's custom built for what Jens Bertalascu wants from his team. I think he's got a little bit more chaos about him. He's a bit more, he's large, let's just put it that way. They've just sent Apstam back to Australia. He was tiny. So a big difference for who's coming on in this game. But
you sometimes just need that, especially in the days of 5 subs. Like, you sometimes just need a big guy off the bench, especially in Scottish football, to just chuck in there for instances like this. Right, okay, we're running out of time, we're running out of ideas. Let's just knock the ball to the back post. He can head it back, and our centre half can volley it in.
They played it into his feet a few times, and each time I feel like he gave it away, or it just bounced out for a throw in or whatever. However, he had a phenomenal chance from a fantastic ball in to the back post, and he headed it down into the ground, which is what you're meant to do, but it's right at Jack Butland. And then, obviously, for the goal, he just peels off of Dujon Sterling, who's a big laddie himself, absolutely dominates him, puts the header back into the proper place. It's like, okay, you are actually a target man. You're not a large striker who's good with a ball at his feet that we see quite often in Scottish football. It's like, no, you're there to head the ball. And he is very, very, very good at heading the ball. I think the touch and all that kind of stuff will come with time. I think that if Jens Bertalascu has proven anything this season, is that he can coach improvements into footballers, and that's certainly what he'll be looking to do with Björgolfsson. But yeah, I think that the chaos factor and just the different thing for Rangers to think about is really what got Motherwell a point in that game in the end, because they had this guy who was just moving across Rangers' defensive line, trying to win headers, trying to battle, trying to bully, which obviously very different from what Maswanise does, which is trying to run in behind and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, a very useful battering ram as things stand, but I would not be surprised to see this guy turn out to be like the second coming of Jan Koller or something by the end of the season, given Ascu's ability to coach improvements. Generally speaking, the subs that he made after the red card, let's just breeze past that. Absolute Stonewall red card. Fadinger didn't discuss it with the referee. Jens Bertel Ascu said after, yeah, that's a red card. Fine.
Yeah.
They were all really positive thinking subs. You know, Priestman had come on, but then there's Charles Cook, Sam Nicholson, Björgolfsson. These are all guys that are, you know, going to attack and try and get forward with the ball. And you could see that in the goal. It comes to Regan Charles Cook on the left-hand side. He plays it back. Priestman finds Nicholson finds Björgolfsson, and then Stephen Welsh is in the box with Paul McGinn backing him up. This is Motherwell with 10 men. This is the second phase way after a set piece. And essentially you've got the two centre-halves have stayed up. You know, everyone's still trying to get a goal, trying to get a result for the team. There's no fear in this Motherwell side whatsoever, and rightly so. I played a bit of devil's advocate on A View from the Terrace earlier on this season and said that they were either going to be absolutely fine or end up relegated. I will happily eat humble pie on that one, because Motherwell are like, they don't need me to tell them. They're a phenomenal football team, and I love their, even when their backs are against the wall, their fearlessness and their ability to go after a team, and a team that has the strength of players that Rangers does as well. You know, I feel like both Ascu and Rohl said after, sometimes 10 men is not an advantage. I can see that because you've then got nothing to lose. But yeah, the way that Motherwell played, the impact that the subs had, really brave subs to make as well, were fantastic.
And finally, before we move on, I know this was something that you said, you mentioned a Rangers correspondent earlier, that he had an issue with Danny Rohl's tactics in this one, and also saying that a draw was a good result. It should also be highlighted.
Yeah, so just quickly on that, because I know we're fast running out of time here, but from start to finish, this felt like a weird one from Danny Rohl. The changes that he made to the lineup from the previous game, you know, the new players that had come in, not getting appearances, two Romans, for example, Scott Olsen, the big Madeira, the striker. Like, you feel like those guys have just got a huge amount of confidence from the last couple of games they've played against Kilmarnock and Queen's Park. This is a massive game. It's a huge game that you're coming into. He said before the game, yes, you know, I've got an eye on Sunday. No, don't have an eye on Sunday, you Burke. Like, what are you playing at? And then the subs that he makes within the game as well. It's like you're defending a lead, so you bring on Telo Asgard and you bring on an extra centre half, and you're against 10 men. It's like you're just doing it wrong. I think Danny Rohl, just to qualify this, I think he's done a wonderful job since he came in, because he's made Rangers incredibly hard to break down, which means they're getting more results than they're not, because they have this solid defensive base to go from. I feel like Motherwell is a team that are so good this season that you have to play them differently. You have to. You can't just, you know, go in and be what you are. You do have to think a bit more tactically. I don't think he did. I think all of his mind was on the game against Hearts on Sunday, which is just such a stupid thing to do. And then after the game, saying that before the game he would have been happy with a point. Right, okay, well that explains why he made that weird lineup choice then, because he's trying to rest guys, you know, hoping that he gets a point this evening so then he can go and, you know, focus it on Hearts. No, I think it was the first big misstep from Danny Rohl.
Oh, yeah.
Massively.
It's generally been quite good at doing what you're supposed to do and say what you're supposed to say, and acting like a Rangers manager. You know, there's the whole, you know, shifted to the suit and brogues when having never worn them at Sheffield Wednesday. But he's generally, you know, he's managed teams that have been pragmatic and have just cared about getting the 3 points. And it's such a bizarre thing, because, like, why are you happy with a point? You're still chasing a team at the top of the league. Like, it's Rangers. Regardless of how poor they've been for many years and how often they've underperformed, there is still a demand from the fans that you have to win every single game. And it's also as well, like, how many times do you see it where a manager does something like this, doesn't get the victory in the first game, And then, I mean, there's huge pressure now on Sunday because it's not like knives will be out or anything like that, because obviously overall he's done a good job, but that's going to be an easy stick for a lot of people to beat him with if Rangers drop points again on Sunday.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's the first thing people will point at. It's like, oh, you said you chose that team because of this game. You didn't win this game. You won neither. It's a potential scenario. And that is when risks stop paying off. And when you're so open about it as well, if I was him, I wouldn't have said, I'm thinking about Sunday. I would have said, oh no, this is the team that I think is going to win this game. And that's it. Like, you don't get lured in by journalists saying like, oh, you know, are you thinking about the Hearts game and all this kind of stuff? You just say, nah, it's focus is on this one. His honesty has killed him a wee bit there, I think.
Yeah.
Although his post-match, he gave a lot of credit to Motherwell. I thought it was very, it was a good interview because it was honest. But it's not honest. You've made a mistake and then you've been honest about it. Just lie. Just lie. People do it all the time. That's fine. Yeah.
Especially football managers.
Yes, 100%.
Right, let's go to our final game. There was only 5 games which took place in midweek because Dundee United against Aberdeen didn't survive the Tannadice pitch. So instead, our final game
wouldn't survive that pitch.
So instead, our final game is the match which took place at the Falkirk Stadium, with Falkirk defeating Dundee by 1-0. Ben Brogio with the only goal of the game. However, there should have been another one in stoppage time after Joe Bevan was adjudged to have been fouled by Nicky Hogarth, who made his, I think, first start of the Premiership season, having come in for Scott Brain, who was a late call-off for this one. He brought him down. Jan Danda stepped up and blasted his penalty wide. One of those ones where if you're going to miss it, you may as well miss it in style. Not one of these ones where the fucking shite bags are just like essentially rolling it back to the goalkeeper because I'm just trying so hard to get on target. So if the goalie goes the right way, he can basically throw his hat on it. No. He was like, I'm going to stick this right in the corner. The goalie's going to have no chance. The goalie did have no chance, but neither did the ball from being inside the posts. But also, just we're on Danda's miss. I like to think in his own small way, he's trying to help Hearts win the title.
Well, by
keeping it interesting for Hibs. Because this is now Falkirk level on points for Hibs. So Hibs can't punt any of these games against Celtic or Rangers if they want to finish in the European places, because Falkirk will be right there to snatch it from them.
Sorry, I'm either very tired or you're playing a dimension of chess I didn't feel possible, because when you said that, I was like, what on earth are you talking about?
I've got it all mapped out, Rob. I'm like Charlie from It's Only Sunny.
Dundee losing to Falkirk is going to help Hearts win the league. Right, okay, man, that sounds good. Aye. Yeah, fair enough. Aye, crack on.
So, I've obviously none of us saw this game, but I've read up quite a bit about it. We've seen the highlights. Something else to point out for the highlights. You see the highlights for this one?
Yes, yeah.
Dylan Tait's miss when he tries to backheel it instead of just wrapping his foot around it. Right, come on now. I know you've had a brilliant season. I know you've defied every negative expectation that was placed on you, your team, your club in general. But come on now, let's settle down a bit.
So I feel like in this podcast I'm death, but instead of bringing eternal rest, I'm bringing potential deflections. Does it not get deflected before it comes to him, which is why it ends up behind him? Is there not a wee touch? Is there not a tiny wee touch, like a very subtle touch, that sort of takes it on to his heel, essentially, rather than him having it in stride? Or have I made that up? Did I just think that that's what happened because it was such a stupid attempt? It's very possible that that's what's happened, but I don't know. I'm feeling potentially guilty now that I might have been really harsh to Dylan Tait when he was actually just very unlucky. But you might have been so correct that I have been mistaken by, like, it's like my mind's playing tricks on me because what on earth was he doing?
I'm actually rewatching it. I'm putting Sports Scene back on. I'm going to rewatch this in live time to try and see if I can figure this out.
Find it. I'm not watching it. I'm just watching for your reaction. I've known you for long enough that the look in your eyes will tell me if I'm right or not. But
I'll need to find it first of all. So I'll talk about other aspects of this game before we find it. And then if I am wrong, I will apologise to Dylan Tait at the conclusion of this podcast. If the Ive player will actually buffer, that would be a good help to me. But I think with this one, It was it was a tricky game for both sides in the fact that they had both played in the Scottish Cup, obviously at the weekend, and both had difficult games for different reasons. Like both of them were taken to extra time. Dundee obviously went to Celtic and, got their heart broken. So maybe a bit of deflation coming into this one. Falkirk won through in the end, and they would have been pumped for that. And they'll be going to look in towards. Oh, I think you're right, actually. I think you're right.
Yes, I knew it. Right, good. There we go. I don't know why I'm so happy about it.
I really thought I'd meant to do it. I missed that deflection initially. But yeah, you're right. Who is that? Is that Luke Graham? Just sticks his toe out, just to get his toe a little bit on the ball. Now, fair enough. Do you know what, actually? It really does get the flick done. So I'm going to tell you, it's a great piece of ingenuity from Dylan Tait in the end.
What a 180 that is. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a 180 completely. Did not see, there was only 2 angles shown, and I did not see that little deflection initially. But fair play, Dylan Tait. I'm sorry. I take it back. I was wrong. But yes, to talk about the game in general. So both obviously this comes Dundee with the extra 24 hours rest, and I played a very different game as well than Falkirk, where Falkirk are basically knocking on the door for, can't remember when it was that Brad Spencer eventually scored, but 95, 100 minutes or whatever, and then playing the full 120. But for most of that, they're trying to break down their opponent. And they both responded to it with their lineups quite differently for this one. Falkirk went with a much changed team, and Dundee went with the same lineup. And I think you can see the kind of benefits and downsides to both in each of the teams. So with Falkirk, they managed to pull out the victory. The new boys they brought in, like that Tait chance, that's good work from Louis Marsh to get down it and to cut it back. The goal was scored by Ben Brogio. He's only recently signed, another young boy. There was a few changes in that Falkirk side, so that they managed to get the 3 points by giving the rest, getting a bit of rotation, giving other players minutes, bettering some of the new guys. However, it wasn't really vintage for Falkirk for what you've seen in this season, and they were a bit disjointed, and they could have had a easily winnable game on paper at home at Dundee, and then they've let 2 points drop in their hope for getting European football. That didn't happen then because Jan Dander blasted his penalty wide, but that could have been the case. Dundee, on the other hand, for large parts of this game, they were impressive in terms of how the play went and negating Falkirk and looking like just as likely to be the team that scores first. They go behind, they bring themselves back in it, should get a point. But at the same time, part of Dundee's problem in this was they were quite laboured in their passing. And one thing in particular that Falkirk looked at them was Tony Ogan, because he's been in good form recently, and they basically doubled up on him. But in order to take advantage of that, you move the ball around quicker to other areas of the park, and Dundee weren't able to do that because they were just moving it too slowly. And it was also another game in which it's looking like Simon Murray is either now well past his prime at this level, having finally reached his prime at this level in his 30s, he's now falling off the cliff, or, to be kind to him, is maybe just the fact that he just doesn't fit into this Stephen Presley team at all.
It's one or t'other. I would imagine that Simon Murray still has a lot to give to someone, because he still has the running power, he still has some ability. It's just not coming off for him like it did last season. So whether that means a departure from Dundee or whatever, it's hard to say. But yeah, Dundee are just so bad at scoring goals. They're so bad at creating and taking opportunities that if you get a lead against them, you're more than likely going to get 3 points. And that's just exactly what Falkirk did. Obviously, they rode their luck towards the end with the penalty miss, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Stephen Presley deserves a lot of credit for what he's got out of this Dundee team this season, and I feel like the fans are way more on board now, obviously, than when they were in July when he was appointed. But yeah, I think that if you don't score goals, you are not going to get any points. That is absolute NPC chat from you there, but it's true. and they weren't able to. One more thing on that is Falkirk's kit was absolutely delightful. I thought it was really, really nice kit.
Yeah, aye. Right, that'll do us. Rob, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Craig.
And thank you to everybody for listening. If you'd like to hear more from us and the main show is not enough for you, then please subscribe to the Patreon. It's also the best way to support the podcast, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast, to hear hours and hours of bonus content. And if you're a Dundee fan and you wanted a bit more Dundee chat, for instance, then Gary and Graham recorded a half-hour podcast on Stephen Presley winning round the fans and the job he's done at Dundee this season. That was recorded earlier this week. There's also a podcast about Dunfermline's season under Neil Lennon and various other things as well. So check that out, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. But until next time, goodbye and apologies to Dylan Tait.